Hey there folks, Wrel here. In the background you'll see some non-spoiler gameplay from Shadow of Mordor while I share some thoughts on better gaming. Today we're going to be talking about our unquenchable need for novelty and new experiences, and how that plays into gaming today. If you look at your library of games, you've probably got a few that you can pick up and play anytime you want. Even if you've had them for a long time, you'll still enjoy them, right? I'm also willing to bet that you've owned a bunch, if not more, games that you've found interesting for a couple of days, and then you stopped playing them. Not because they were bad games necessarily, but because you just stopped. You got bored, you got something new, or maybe you finished it and decided to move on. But why is it that certain games are extremely replayable and addicting, but other games just aren't? The answer is novelty. By definition, novelty is the quality of being new, original, or unusual. As human beings, we're compelled to pursue and experience the new, the original, and the unusual. How heavily we pursue it will vary from person to person, and it's a broad spectrum between neophiles on one end and neophobes on the other, but this trait is built into us genetically. If you read the book New by Winifred Gallagher, you'll see that her theory is that our interest or our aversion to the new and novel is ingrained in our survival instincts. In short, in order to survive, we need to be able to instinctively react to something new, either to explore what it does or if we should fear it or not. We need to be able to constantly adapt to the novelties around us, and a lot of that actually goes back to the brain. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that motivates us to pursue rewards, and if our dopamine levels are high, we're more prone to take a risk that might yield a reward, but if our dopamine levels are low, we're more likely to play it safe. And what's really interesting is that there's an area in our brain known as the substantia nigra ventral tegmental area, or the SNVTA, and the SNVTA is tied to our hippocampus and our amygdala, which affect our learning and memory. What experiments have found is that when they showed novel imagery to participants, not mundane images, not even kinda sorta novel images, but when they showed uniquely novel imagery to participants, it would open up the dopamine pathways in the SNVTA. So to make sense of that, when we see something new, something original, something unusual, we get dopamine and we're more likely to pursue it. This is one of the reasons why movies sell the most tickets on opening day, the reason why we'll laugh at the joke the first time but we won't find it as funny the second time around, and why the biggest, shiniest AAA titles in the gaming industry will get massive player bases early on and then lose half of it in the month following. All of this, though, brings us back to an important question. What is it about some games that they're replayable time and time again? Why do we still enjoy these very specific games? And in order to answer that, just as an experiment between all of us, I need to ask you which games you are currently still playing. Which games do you pick up time and time again? Answer that in the comments section if you know off the top of your head, but for me, it's PlanetSide 2 of course, and Heroes of Newerth whenever I want to take a break from it. Both games are competitive and multiplayer. The first game, PlanetSide 2, I use it as a way to create and share new content, and then gather feedback from all of you. And the second game, Heroes of Newerth, I most commonly play with a real-life friend. I played Mass Effect 2 and to a lesser degree Mass Effect 3 for a long time, and I've never played it the same way twice. Keeping that in mind, I'm going to taint the results of our little experiment by framing you with what I feel is the answer, but I believe that the reason that I play a game for any length of time is first quality, of course. You won't play a game that you don't like, but the second reason, the main one that allows me to continue playing a game, is how many times I can shake up the experience and make things new again. In other words, novelty. With competitive multiplayer games, that's easy to do because you're constantly fighting new opponents with different tactics. You're oftentimes finding new ways to hone your own skills. Even the social interactions are different each time around. Imagine a solid multiplayer mode as a way to constantly infuse new content into your game, over and over and over again. From a single player perspective, I think it's much harder to do. Fortunately, games like Mass Effect give you meaningful choices, especially in the form of your love interest, or who you're going to let die, and what class or even what gender you're going to play. Those factors are enough to keep shaking up the experience at least a few times over. So how do we harness this novelty effect? To an extent, we've been doing it for ages already. American advertising is finally catching on to what Japan has known forever by showing us completely ridiculous and even confusing advertisements that leave us thinking, oh, what did I just watch? They tend to hold our attention. The Old Spice body wash commercials with Terry Crews immediately come to mind. One of the downsides to our desire for novelty is that we'll oftentimes invest a lot of money into a game that wears thin really quick. For me, that's a game like Terra Online, which was basically banking on its dynamic combat system to carry it to success. But once the shininess wore off, once the combat got just run-of-the-mill, you got to see the game for what it was, and to me that was just another Eastern MMO with a built-in grind. Shadow of Mordor is another example of this, I feel, and it's the reason why I'm using this footage as an example. It's a great game, don't get me wrong, but outside of its IP, it was banking on the Nemesis system to keep players engaged. Without the Nemesis system, we would have quickly written it off as another Assassin's Creed clone with a Lord of the Rings flavor. But because it had this new sort of system, I bought into the concept. I had to play it. And, at least from my perspective, I come to find out that a couple of days of casual play completes the campaign, that the game gets extremely easy the further you progress, and that the Nemesis system, the sole feature that was really allowing it to stand apart, loses a lot of its luster after just a few hours. And had I known that I would have mowed through the game's novelty so quickly, I wouldn't have spent the cash. And this isn't meant to talk poorly about the game itself, because like I said, it's loads of fun, I'm glad I got to play it. Voice acting was great, storyline was what I wanted it to be, and the Nemesis system sets a new standard for how AI should be done in many games to come. But I also could have waited until the game was on sale and got just as much enjoyment and fulfillment out of it. Companies know that they can hook us early on with pre-order deals. Exclusive pants to make you run faster, pets that you're going to end up replacing anyway, they know this. And if you've ever wondered why games are coming pre-packaged with DLC, or why companies roll out what's basically the same game with a new look year after year, that's why. Because at least right now, you're prone to act on your impulses. If you take that another direction and look at how to keep us hooked past the initial launch, it again comes down to novelty. Long gone are the days where we're going to get a full game for $60. And I'm not even talking about the fact that development costs are increasing and we're still paying the same price that we did 5 years ago. I'm talking about the simple truth that if you don't constantly hit us over the head with new content, then we're going to eventually get bored and go play something else. And I make that sound like a negative thing, but I'm not entirely sure that that's the case. In PlanetSide 2, when Hossin was released, we instantly saw more people log in and start playing. Then it evened out. When the Valkyrie was released, same thing, instantly more people, then it evened out. Developers can use this sort of boon to advertise other less known features. For example, say a new vehicle comes out in PlanetSide 2, and you bring a whole lot of your players back to the game. What if you also had a new tutorial system, a new UI, and reduced frustrations for newer players? That's not what you advertise, obviously. You don't say, come try PlanetSide 2 again because we promise the new player experience doesn't suck anymore. No, you tell the veterans to come check out this new vehicle, content system, whatever, and they become advocates of your game. Just like trying to lure in shoppers with a sale so that you can also get them to sign up for your loyalty card, except it's not evil and annoying. Now, with that said, being able to identify what is and isn't going to be a game you continue to play over and over again is a skill that I think we, as a society, are eventually going to figure out. We've already done this with door-to-door salesmen. We know you're here to sell us stuff, we don't want it, just go away. But in this low-friction digital world, I think we're still adapting. With Steam sales, pre-orders, new games and apps coming out of every orifice, it can be difficult to keep our wallet in check. But we'll get better, and it'll force developers to up their quality in kind. If this video has been interesting, helpful, or entertaining, please feel free to like, subscribe, tell your friends about the channel, and if you could answer that question from earlier, what games have that replayability factor for you? What games have you kept playing again and again for months or years? Let me know in the comments section down below. Thanks very much, folks. We're all signing off.